In other news, the Democratic Alliance will be in the High Court in Pretoria tomorrow to challenge the Employment Equity Amendment Act, which it says affords the Labour Minister unchecked power to impose quotas on companies. The second biggest partner in the Government of National Unity has launched a constitutional challenge of Section 15A of the legislation, which gives the executive authority to put equity targets on 18 economic sectors. The DA says these quotas destroy jobs and harm the economy. There will be a briefing on the DA's approach to the High Court at 1:30 this afternoon, and we will take you there live. In the meantime, let's take you to Newzroom Afrika's senior politics reporter, Ziyanda Ngcobo. She is at the party's headquarters ahead of that briefing this afternoon. Ziyanda, good afternoon to you. So what is the basis for the DA's approach to the High Court, given that broad-based black economic empowerment is a government policy?
Well, Michelle, I can tell you that they are fighting with 15A of the Equity Amendment Act, which they say flies in the face of Section 9 of our Constitution, which enshrines that everyone is equal before the law. So in the first instance, Michelle, we must note that this piece of legislation has not yet been operationalized and hasn't come into effect, which is why the DA is trying to stop it in its tracks. They are saying that the minister shouldn't be allowed to impose numerical, quotas on companies when it will exclude, people from getting jobs, especially based on demographics. But let me bring in the DA's Shadow Labour Minister, Michael Bagram, who will speak about this, because in the first instance, we know about our country's history and the purpose of a broad-based black economic empowerment. What exactly is it about 15A of the Employment Equity Amendment Act that the DA has a particular issue with, and what does it say?
Thank you. Yes, we do come from a very broken past, and we do need redress, that's for sure. And the DA has always said that we need that redress. But then you need someone that's going to bring the redress in, not legislation that we've had now for over 20 years. And it's actually got worse during that time. So in fact, that is a mitigated disaster, an absolutely unmitigated disaster we've seen from the legislation. So what Minister Meth is now doing is she's now turning the screws tighter to see if the bad experiment can become a good experiment. Now that's a sign of madness, in the sense that you can't take something and try and make it better by making it harsh. The bottom line is 15A is setting hard and fast, cut in the stone laws. So whether they don't take into account anything. And when you ask Minister Meth, how did she get those quotas? How did she get those ridiculous statements that she's made? She can't really answer us. She said she consulted, but no, we don't know who she consulted with and how she consulted. There's no science to it at all. Now, what we're going to see coming out of that is more disaster. We're going to see it become worse. We're going to see the employment figures become worse, because this is an experiment that has been done for 25 years, and we can't carry on that way. What we in the Democratic Alliance want to do is real redress. We want to actually expand the workforce. We want to expand the economy. We want to show that we can do this. Now, we've done our own experiment. It's called the Western Province. The Western Province has tried in its utmost, despite some of the negative, harsh legislation. They've brought down the unemployment down to 19%. It's just below 19%, when we have what Kasatu tells us is a 42% unemployment in the whole country. Now, this is SHIP South Africa that has developed a very bad leak. So
I have to jump in there, Mr. Bagram, because you keep saying it's an experiment that failed, because in essence, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that BBBEE has failed. Which parts of BBBEE have failed when you live in a country where the majority are black Africans? And if you're saying the numbers are harsh, how exactly are they harsh in terms of the numbers? So if you're saying there's 80% black people, then surely 80% of the workforce and companies should be exactly that.
Yes, so that's why it's failed. It should be, because we've had 25 years of this. If you've had 25 years and you keep doing the same experiment and you're saying that the workforce is still not reflecting the demographics, then that's failure by anyone's imagination. Not a Democratic Alliance statement. That's a statement from the ANC that it's failed. And if it's failed, then there's a real problem. And if there's a real problem, you can't do the same thing again, bring it back again on a harsher fashion and say, now this is going to work. It doesn't sound right by any stretch of the imagination. We can spend the next 25 years destroying our economy even more. We don't want that. The Constitution calls for redress. We want redress. And we've shown how it can be done. And if we had at least the removal of that 15A, that we could actually then take into account the demographics of the actual province, the demographics of that industry, the qualifications, the productivity. We have problems in this country. Our productivity, for instance, is the second worst in the world. Our employment figures are the worst in the world. How do we explain that? And we explain it because of the lack of redress.
How do you explain, though, to your GNU partner, which will accuse you of being anti-transformation? In fact, the president of the ANC and the president of this country has accused the DA of being anti-transformation, because the other argument could be, well, maybe Triple B hasn't worked not because of the actual legislation, but the nature of the global economy. There are several factors that have led to the sluggish growth of our economy, and that's got nothing to do with quotas, which are meant to be dealing with our unjust past.
Well, it's quite simple, because all our neighbors here in Africa, their economies are all improving. They're all reflecting the demographics of their country. Why is it South Africa hasn't? Why is it that we have gone worse from year to year? So it's easily explicable. And yes, there is a problem in the world, and yes, we need to tackle that problem. But we know unemployment in South Africa is the worst in the world. When you look at our neighbors that aren't as rich as South Africa, they are reflecting the demographics. And how do they do it? They don't have legislation of this nature at all. What they're doing is they're uplifting all boats. All boats are floating on the incoming stream. And that incoming stream is not coming here. There's something that's holding it back. And it can't be said that it's the business community. It is, unfortunately, the negative legislation.
Michael Bergram is the DA Shadow Labour Minister. And of course, it's something that's going to be discussed over the next couple of days, starting at 1:30 when that media briefing gets underway. But certainly within the Government of National Unity, lots of discussion about the DA. They've been accused of consistently being against a transformation, having an aggressive approach, and wanting to really fight against acts that are seen to be progressive. It was first the NHI, it was the Bella Act, it was the Expropriation Act, and now it's the Employment Equity Amendment Act. So lots to talk about over the next few days.
Yeah, I'll be interested to hear what else is said at that briefing at 1:30, Ziyanda, in a context where your guest tells us that we should be reflecting the demographics in our country because our neighbors are doing it. I mean, the employment and income numbers from Statistics South Africa tell us the exact opposite, that we are not reflecting the demographic in our country.
Absolutely, Michelle. I mean, the statistics are there. So we'll have to get into what exactly 15A says. In fact, I can bring it up for you quickly, Michelle, because that's exactly what the Democratic Alliance is fighting against. They're basically saying, and it's basically the determination of sectoral numerical targets. And the DA is saying this shouldn't be a power that's afforded only to the Labour Minister. You would have heard Michael Bergram saying, well, the minister claims that they've consulted, but who exactly did they consult with? And so the minister may, by notice in Gazette, Michelle, identify national economic sectors for the purposes of this act, having regard to the relevant code contained in the standard industrial classification of all economic activities published by Statistics South Africa. So it's an important point that you've raised there about Statistics South Africa. And it's seemingly the minister would rely on those statistics to identify which sectors are lagging behind when it comes to representation of demographics within particular industries, and giving the minister power then to impose numerical quotas, which the DA says, as I've mentioned earlier, flies in the face of Section 9 of our Constitution, which enshrines that we are all equal before the law.
All right, 1:30 is when that briefing is taking place.